Welcome back to my channel Automation Hub Sathak, and we are starting a new series on exception handling in Java. So we learn about, in this particular video, I will tell you what are exceptions in Java and what is exactly exception handling in Java. So before I proceed with the code, I'll actually showcase a very live example of a real-time lifetime scenario. What kind of things happen if there is a certain exception in your life and how it affects the other aspects related to it beyond that event. Okay, so let's go ahead and understand first the concept of flow and the concept of exception, and then we'll understand how will we handle a particular exception. So let's begin. So let's say, for example, there is a sports person. Okay, his life is very simple and normal. Let's say he wakes up. So let's say this is the sports person, and he puts up an alarm clock at 5 in the morning, and he wakes up at 5 in the morning. That is his daily routine. He just does that on a daily basis because he wants to play for his country. So he practices very hard. Now what he does, he gets ready and he gives himself approximately 30 minutes to get ready. So by 5:30 a.m. this gentleman is almost ready. Okay, he's ready to go to his take his conveyance and go to his sports ground. Now what he does, he has a bike, or you can say or a motorbike, or a bicycle, or whatever. He starts around at 5:31, 5:32, and somehow he reaches the ground after driving for 20 minutes. So he reaches somewhere around 5:50 to 5:55. Okay, by this time he reaches the ground. Then his practice exactly starts at 6 a.m. and it continues for whatever amount of time. So his practice starts at 6 a.m. and it is his daily routine. So he wakes up, gets ready, then once he gets ready, he has some during ready he eats some breakfast, something which his mom cooked instantly, and then he picks up his motorbike and then he runs. So this is his daily life. This is his very smooth operations of a particular sports person. Now what happens? All of a sudden, so this flow is exactly smooth in nature. There is nothing untoward in it. It is his daily routine, smooth flow. Everything is fine. No unwanted events, no surprises. Okay, he's just fine. There is no problem in it. Let's say, for example, one fine morning, he's driving towards his ground, and all of a sudden, there is a problem in the bike. Okay, so let's understand that something happened in his bike. His bike broke in the middle of the road and he is not able to fix it. So what would happen? He will never be able to reach by before even at 5:59 because he's already late. Somehow, because he is late here, because this event got affected, so somehow he will not be able to reach on time. So what will happen? He will get punishment by the coach. He said, you are already late, so something is not right. The coach will not understand that his bike was out of order, something. He's a very strict coach, for example, and whatever he says, that's how it is. So he's late to this particular practice. So now what happens? So technically, because of this failure, because of this event goes for a toss. So what is this event? This event which made a difficulty in him to approach a particular place, this event is known as an exception. This is an unwanted event. He did not want this for whatever reasons. He did not want such a thing to happen, but somehow it happened. It is luck or destiny or whatever. It happened. So what happened because of this? His future events got affected. Future events got affected. Right? He could not practice. He was given punishment to run 3 rounds of the whole ground. And this is not a normal flow. This was a smooth flow. The black represents the smooth flow. And this red, because of this red, the smooth flow is getting affected. So this is what an exception, an unwanted event. And this is what the future events got affected because of this unwanted event. So now this is exception. Now I will discuss what is exception handling. So there are a couple of things that this particular budding sports person can do. First, he can call his dad or his friend who might have woke up, and he can seek help to get him dropped. To drop him around 5, even if it is 5:59 a.m., that's fine. He's still reached before 6 a.m. He can do that. 2, he can park his bike at a safe place somewhere, and he can take an Uber or some public transport, anything which will fetch him to reach there as soon as possible, or just exactly at 6, or maybe 6:01, wherein he'll just say something and manage. So this is what he's doing. He's handling the exception. So this particular 2 points is he's trying to handle the exception so that this particular thing does not get affected. This particular thing does not get affected. He knows that his bike is already affected. So for one particular event, he does not want his future events to get affected because of one particular event in which he did not have a role to play. It is just a machine. Machine can get affected. But he did not want his practice to go bad. Neither did he want his coach to think that this guy is not serious enough, he's not on time and all that, he's not punctual. So he's trying to save the future events. And this is what is known as exception handling. He's handling on his own how to manage so that the future events do not fall off, or do not fall off guard or go off track. So this is called exception handling. Similarly, this is a runtime event. He is continuously running. He's getting up, he's getting ready, he's taking his bike, he's running his bike, he's going to place. It is a purely runtime environment that is working on. Completely runtime events. So exception always occurs during runtime events. So there is no compile time event over here. Everything is runtime. So he is running, and during that runtime something happened. So he is smart enough to handle that particular exception and still then make sure that he reaches and his next sequence of event does not get affected. Similarly, a programmer might have a very smooth flow wherein his logic is absolutely right and he gets his output and something, and everything is fine. But sometimes, maybe because of a certain change request or a new implementation or something, he might put up a logic which might not be correct, and there might be an exception, and because of that exception, the future events or the future logic of the code will not get executed because of that exception. So the developer or the programmer should be smart enough to actually handle that particular exception and move on. Later he can come back and actually debug the exception and rectify his logic. So let's understand this in the code perspective. So I'm gonna make a new package and I'll write exceptions, and here I will give something known as episode 1. So let's say I'm just trying to print something. So I'm printing 2, I'm printing 3, I'm printing 4, I'm printing 5, I'm printing 6. Now if I execute this particular program, you will see the output is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Absolute normal smooth flow. There is no logic which is defying it. Okay. Now let's say at 4 I write something as this. There is no error. But you know, mathematically anything divided by 0 tends to infinity. So how will an infinite thing be handled by Java, JVM? How will Java Virtual Machine compile this? So let's see. So at this point of time, there is a certain exception because of an illogical code, right? So let me run this output. See, 1, 2, 3, up to here there was no logic disarray, everything is fine. Here exception came into picture. That is why JVM said that you have an arithmetic exception divided by 0. So now what happens? 5 is correct, 6 is correct, but 5 and 6 are also getting affected because of this particular statement. So 5 and 6, even though they are correct, they are not getting printed. So unless and until you handle this particular row, your 5 and 6 logic will also not get printed. That is what I was trying to say. So now you know this is an exception. Now how will you handle this exception? Very simple. Just for an example, you can surround this with a try catch block. Okay. Now let's execute this after handling the exception. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 do get printed. This one is handled by the exception handler. Even though we still do not understand how it handled, but at least our 5 and 6 got printed. The developer, when he or she will make time, he or she will go and manage and look at his or her code and change the logic accordingly, and typically make his or her code runnable and get free of exceptions. So during runtime, an exception could come, and the developer or the programmer should be smart enough to handle it and progress, so that because of that exception, the other outcomes would not get affected. This is known as exception handling. I hope from this small video you are able to understand how an exception occurs, why an exception occurs, at what time. Runtime exception occurs. An exception never occurs at compile time. Please remember this. It is an interview question as well. And how he or she will handle if there is an exception, so that the further sequence logic actually gets an outcome. So this is a very simple and basic understanding of what is exception and what is exception handling in Java. I hope you liked my session, and if you did, please do not forget to support my channel. Thank you so much. Sarthak here, signing off.